God did not create me the way he created Adam, nor did he create you that way. In fact, go to the Bible, and you'll find that on the sixth day, at the end of the sixth day, God ended his work of creation. As far as we know, and as far as the Bible tells us, God has not created, at least on this planet, since then. Eve was taken from Adam's life. She was not a different life. She was an extension of his life. Cain and Abel were an extension of the life of Adam. Adam and Eve came together. Their life joined together, and the same life that was in them became a third individual. A son was born. It was the same life. And through the law of nature, the law of propagation, when something is propagated, when it is passed on, it takes on the characteristics of the parents. Adam and Eve's son could not have been born different from Adam and Eve. When Adam and Eve fell and their life became corrupted, it was impossible for them to bring forth an uncorrupted son. So the Bible says Adam was made in the image of God. But then it says Adam brought forth a son in his image. After he committed sin and after the image of God was distorted, then he brought forth a son in his image. The son had to be in the same distorted image. So in this sense, when Adam sinned, all of us sinned, because whatever pollutions, corruptions, infirmities, inabilities came upon Adam that day was passed on to his children. Every sin that we ever commit today, every weakness that we have, every incapability was inherent in that life of Adam that day when he sinned against God. It became a part of his experience. We are just seeing Adam's life maturing and becoming what it always was. Everything you see today, the murders, the rapings, the lootings, the rest of it, the bombings, the terrorism, is just the growing up of that life of Adam. It's just maturing. It was there in Adam in that day. It was in Lucifer's heart the day when he envied Christ. He was a murderer from the beginning, not because he planned murder in his mind, but it was inherent in the course that he was taking. So we see today the development of this life in people, and we say, man, Adam wasn't that wicked, but it was in him, and it's his life. So in this life that is passed on, all of Adam's children have that seed of sin. And Paul says this is the reason why we die. Because along with the corruption, something accompanies it, and it is mortality. That's what he says. Now let's go on to the next verse. Well, before we go to the next verse, I just want you to put yourself in Paul's mindset. Now when Paul says this, just like today, somebody is likely to say, Paul, that's a big statement you just made. Prove it. I mean, how can you say we die because of what Adam did? Prove it. Now, that's exactly what he sets out to do in the next two verses. Let's follow his reasoning carefully. The next verse says, for until the law, sin was in the world. But sin is not imputed when there is no law. Now the critical word in this, there are a couple of critical words, but I want to focus on one of them first. And it is, what is the meaning of this word, imputed? Thank you, Jordan. When something is imputed to you, it means that in the theological sense, in the biblical sense, in the sense of the law, it means it is charged to your account. Where there is no law, nobody can charge you with wrong. I mean, Howard and Neville and Reuben are staying in a house across the road from Mark. Now I notice that I'm staying by Mark's house. I notice everybody comes into Mark's home and hardly anybody takes off their shoes, including myself. And I don't really feel guilty because I've never heard Mark say, take off your shoes. But at the house where Howard is staying, everybody leaves their shoes at the door. And when I go there, I take off my shoes. Because Mark told us at the beginning that the people who have this house. It's ours to use, but they only stipulate, don't walk on the carpet with your shoes. Now, there's a law. And even though the owners are not there, if I walk on that carpet, how do you think I feel? I feel guilty. Because where there is a law, there comes guilt. Guilt is imputed to a person. Sin is imputed to a person where there is law. Where there is no law, then sin is not imputed. You are free to do the same thing that you cannot do somewhere else because there's no law. Now, Paul is saying if there's no law, sin is not imputed to you. But he talks about a certain time period and he says, until the law. Now, if he says until the law, what is he really saying? When is until the law? Huh? Until it was stated. All right. So you have a point here where the law was stated, or the law was spoken, or the law was given if you prefer. And until that happened, you have a period here, and this period is called until the law. During this period, what do you have? During this period, Mark has not said, take off your shoes. During this period, you don't have a rule telling you what to do. So is sin imputed to you in this period? Cannot be, because there's no law to impute sin to you. Now notice Paul's argument. Paul says, until the law, sin was in the world. But sin cannot be imputed to you if there's no law. So it's possible for sin to be there, but for you to be not charged with sin. To go back to my illustration, it's possible that all of us should take off our shoes when you're going to Mark's house. It might be the decent thing to do. And maybe we are people who still need to be under the law. Because it is right to not mess up a person's floor, don't you think? But if there's no law, nobody can say you are guilty. But it might still be wrong. But even though it is wrong, nobody can chastise you for it because nobody has said it is wrong. Now Paul is saying before the law was given, until the law, sin existed in the world. But nobody could say you are guilty. In other words, God could not say to people, you are guilty, because he had not yet given the law. Now I know when I say this, Adventists always say, but Abraham had the law. But it says Abraham kept my commandments and so forth. And they say the law must have, and they start an argument about the law must have been there from eternity. We can't just deal with what Paul is saying first and then get down to the other arguments. Maybe I should just touch on it because maybe it's buzzing around in people's heads too.